All right, everybody. Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for coming. All right, welcome. I would like to start this evening by thanking Dean El-Khoury for his continuous support with the lecture series and prioritizing the importance of getting outside voices and outside perspectives to you guys here at our USOA community. A huge thanks also to Tecnoglass, our generous sponsor in making these talks possible. This is the second talk of the semester series, and just a quick reminder, the theme of the semester's lecture title is Elastic, Between Architecture and Urbanism. The lecture series posits a group of practices leveraging the potential of design to define environments stretching across scale, fabric, social contexts, territories, sensibilities, and objects. Sharing a common thread, lecture guests hold a deeply rooted agenda linking people to place, building to place, material to place, and social values to place. These uncommon approaches to practice challenge the profession's contemporary thinking on the role of architecture, stretching design thinking across the limits of building. In these innovative practices, there is a contemplative yet vigilant approach in the relationship of architecture and urbanism, and elasticity of design emerges. Before I introduce Margarita and Inaki, I would like to remind everyone that these lectures offer HSW credits. Special guest. To receive this credit, please put your name and AIA number or license number and email in the chat, or email the same information to me at smeyer@miami.edu. We will put that information in the chat. I do submit this by Friday, so please don't email me in 3 months asking for credit for tonight. So, on to Inaki Alday and Margarita Jover, who collectively define aldayjover. Inaki is a registered architect, landscape architect, and urbanist. The multidisciplinary research-based practice focuses on innovation and is particularly renowned for its new approach to the relation between cities and rivers, in which the natural dynamics and flooding become part of the public space and the buildings, eliminating the idea of catastrophe. Alday is Dean at Tulane School of Architecture since 2018, after 7 years at UVA, where he was professor and chair. Margarita Jover is the other half of aldayjover and is registered architect, landscape architect, and urbanist. Jover is a professor of architecture and director of the landscape and engineering program at Tulane University, and is clearly a huge part, the other half of the description of the practice I just read. Tonight, Inaki and Margarita will give a presentation titled Cities and Rivers. It explores the relationship between building, landscape, territory, and culture. I'm extremely excited to have them here. Please help me in welcoming Inaki and Margarita.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having us. Here is just the first slide of the book, the monography. I'm going to hand over the work to Inaki, and we'll be alternating as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope this works. Little voice now. Thank you again for having us here. We typically lecture separately, so we are going to do a mix together. Hopefully it will work well, and hopefully it will resonate with the topic of the cities and the relation between the continuity of the relation between the building, the public space, the city, the territory, and even going down to the beginning of the human scale. We are going to explain 6 projects, but we are going to quickly introduce ourselves. Okay, so this is where we are coming from. Margarita and I are complementary in many ways. As you can see, Margarita is coming from Barcelona and Cameroon, where one of her memories is the space of the sky, the bolt of the sky, how the Central African space outside was covered by this amazing sky bolt. And I'm coming from the desert, very different to Miami and to New Orleans, desert in the center of Spain, Monegros, near Zaragoza, landscape also shaped by water, because this is actually a river, a dry river that is cultivated and with devices to stop the erosion. We are now in New Orleans in a different climate, very similar. We were enjoying the rain this afternoon. A place with a lot of challenges like Miami, with I think it's probably different that you can have here foundations somehow. In New Orleans, we are in a kind of flan caramel in which everything moves. It's a challenging environment. We have an earthquake every time the trash truck goes through the street. And then we teach at Tulane University, a kind of cousin of Miami University School of Architecture. We feel very close. And we keep our practice in Barcelona, in an old palace of the 17th century in the center of Barcelona. This is our office is in this level. A very interesting place because it's the only palace in Barcelona in which the family still lives there. And we are helping in the restoration of all this. So it's a kind of new changing environment with kind of deep anchors that we don't know yet how it works. And we are very interested in the materiality. We started as many architects working very abstractly with the offices that we worked for, Margarita Jover with Pepe Ginás, I with Martín La Peña, Elias Torres. But we got very interested in materiality very early on and in getting things built. That's something we have always done. Our work is through competitions, but always ideas competitions for being built, not ideas for the sake of ideas. So the exploration of material, the exploration of structure, and the exploration of programs and programmatic assemblages. This is a building in which spaces are interlocked in order to fulfill the program and the structure. Sometimes exploring and taking risk in structures and in construction. This is a very big building. As you see, it's made like a kind of, almost if it was a model, with a very, very thin feet and a little bit more walls made of concrete and with these textures to create a building that has this size and this presence and this kind of abstraction with a strong materiality, something that we have been always very interested. And this resonates with our godfather in architecture, which is a very well-known Spanish architect that is our dream, Alejandro de la Sota. And this exploration in materiality comes probably from our first project that Margarita will explain in the river and the materiality of the river. But we try to work with this materiality in the public space and how materiality in public space is able to organize programs, people, and perception. This is the recovery or the public space pedestrianization of the city of Ibiza. You may have heard that island, Party Island, famous in Europe. And we have several projects in which public space and pavements are critical. Sometimes we joke that if you let me choose the tiles in a city, we can change the city completely, because it means changing movement, changing patterns of traffic and mobility, and etc. So our focus in this kind of continuous between the building and the public space, and understanding that the public space is the place of the democracy, is the place where people gather together, independent very often of the socioeconomic status, is the place of freedom. It all depends also in the design and how the design is enabling the flexibility for people to use it freely, systemically. We are very keen on public spaces that have no accidents, that have no funny ideas, no occurrences, that are very systemic, that can be used in many ways. We talk about, we are designing chessboards, but we are not designing a monopoly. We are designing chessboards in which you can play in many different games there. So people are in the end the ultimate client of us. Even when we work with a mayor, our client is actually not the mayor, it's the citizens of the city. And often we have got in trouble with that. The other issue that we are very interested in is in housing and in affordable housing. In the very early of our career, we did a couple of single family houses, and we decided that no more, enough family houses in the world, and that we were going to focus in affordable collective housing. And in some cases with very clear ambition of trying to explore which is the interface between the domestic and the public space. So here you have an image of the old part of Zaragoza, a city in the center of Spain, very damaged, very degraded, as you see, and buildings that were going to be filling spaces. And the interior becoming a square, and the relation between the space of the square through this kind of media of relation. So we are very interested in how life shows up, but how you have certain control of life in a way, because sure, every one of you have a lot of things that do not feel at home, do not fit at home, that you need extra space. And then you have to put it somewhere. So balconies, terraces, backyards are the places for that. So the effort is how you create something in which people feel free, but are still polite and are still part of the kind of mediated freedom. So this is one of these experiments on that, or this other recent public house, affordable housing, in which again it was about working in the let's see if this works. It's about working in the public spaces inside the building, and how public spaces inside the buildings are these spaces of relation. Here you see that little video from Instagram of the day of giving the keys to the new owners, and it's kind of fantastic, because these kids were like, "Oh, this is our new house. This is our new apartments." So they were so excited working, running from one place to the other. So at the end, this is what we as architects and landscape architects and urbanists, our focus is in our citizens, let's say. In this work that, again, I'm going through some ideas and before entering in projects, we started to work for international organizations. This is a World Bank project that we also are consultants for this kind of work in public space, infrastructures, and water. So we were called here because they were doing an embankment, and we transformed the idea of an embankment to an idea of a long linear park for the city because of the problems of infrastructures. You will see in the projects that we will explain in that we have been working in water and the water and river dynamics for many years since our very first project. So how we can deal with rivers that are in Southeast Asia, super strong, and how we keep the relation between the people and the river, keeping the people safe, which is in the end something you cannot forget, because we cannot be fundamentalist in terms of keeping the river and the integrity of the river. There's the integrity of the river and the people. So how to find spaces, floodable spaces that are part of the community and the neighborhoods in the back or in the nearby and are floodable, and then how to plan and doing the urban planning in order to avoid gentrification. In the moment that you have protected the areas that are floodable and are people who are most vulnerable living in those floodable places, when they stop being floodable, there's going to be a gentrification process. How you plan in advance for that not to happen. So these are some of these concerns that we are dealing with at many scales, in which the human dimension is critical, because we know that we are in a crisis here in Miami and in New Orleans. We know it very well. We deal with them in a semester basis, and we know that the people who are most vulnerable are the ones who are dealing with the catastrophic effects of the storms, of the floods, etc. But yes, of course, many people dying every year in countries in Southeast Asia, in Africa, but also in Germany and in Central Europe and in all over the world. So it's not a problem that is like, okay, these are these poor people who are dealing with. We are all in the same issue, no? So extreme weather, this is 2016 in Paris, the first time that the cellars of the Louvre were evacuated and the artwork was taken out from the cellars. The first time after World War II bombing of the German planes happened because the Sena went out from the banks. So yeah, German bombers and the Seine River. As dangerous for the museum, both similarly. But these are news from Yellowstone just a couple of years ago. So we are all in the same. And what we have realized is that we don't have a backyard anymore. We had thrown stuff to our backyard for many years. And now we have discovered that we are in this, as Jedediah Pordy describes, a three-fold crisis that is about ecology, economics, and politics. And we have realized that there's no rebalancing system, that this crisis, we cannot keep expecting that things are going to be back to where they were. Because, yeah, we have been using our backyard, and now our backyard is fighting us back. And we are realizing what's going on. So in this work that we have focused, that is very much in this relation between rivers and its dynamics and the cities and the people living there and in the architecture, this is not a new conflict whatsoever. Here you see a couple of historic drawings. This is 17th century Rome. As you see, there's the rest of a bridge that has been damaged by a flood. You see what is in the back, in the river area of the city, nice churches, palaces, and such. And here you have the sacks and the areas of conflict of the city, always the back of the city to the river, and always the flood. And this is 15th century, a Dutch drawing in which we have been dealing with this fraught relation between the river and the city. The river is the reason for the cities to be placed in absolutely almost every case, but at the same time is the danger, is the resource, and is the threat, the two things together. And this is how we have been historically dealing with rivers in cities. So this is Rome, a river that is walled, an island that looks like a ship, big infrastructures. This is the spillway, the Morganza spillway in the Mississippi. Huge infrastructures and huge catastrophes. There are other ways to deal with this. The Dutch have been working in this model, what they call room for the river, for the last 2008, 2018, with the idea that instead of keep raising the protections, widening and giving more space to the river, that motto, room for the river, and widening or increasing the capacity, because half Europe drained through the Netherlands. The other half Europe drained through the Danube to the Mediterranean. But the other last pitch that I'm doing is, this is where the money is. Here in Miami, you all read Spanish, no? So this is what is going to be the money that needs to save the planet. This is of course no scientific whatsoever, but this is what the world now we are focused in, and it's a matter of infrastructure, it's a matter of public space, it's a matter of planning and rethinking the city and rethinking our relations with the phenomena, with the storms, with the rivers, and etc. So I'm going to stop here and let Margarita take the next.
We're going to explain 6 projects. So the first one is the fluvial waterfront. It's a project recognized internationally for the design of floatscapes. And this is a project of transformation of an urban backyard towards the river into a waterfront, promoting the engagement of the city with the river and its dynamics. The area you see at the image in yellow was a construction materials landfill before the project was done. All the area along the river was a giant backyard with garbage, washing machines, car wheels, etc. So served by this road you see in red, a series of facilities were placed at the edge between the town and the river. And these facilities were accessed from the road in red with their back at the river, a classical situation that occurs everywhere. And so the project is then a multi-scalar, multi-temporal a set of strategies to transform this backyard into a front yard. Let's go and flow it here. So the project began in 1996 because an association of bullfights wanted a facility in the yellow circle where finally was built the sport hall. We as designers, architects observed that looking at beyond the site at the city itself, doing this zoom out typical situation, we saw that the plot was almost the only open space available between the town and its river. And that building in this place was not a very wise decision for the future. We didn't know what to do, but we knew what not to do. We knew that the responding to the client as service providers to build this bullfight arena on that place was not the right solution. Visiting the site and the city several times, we learned quite a lot in relation to floods, drainage, dominant wind, landfills, sewers, etc. And we decided to propose an alternative location and typology for the building. So in blue, you see where the rented bullfight arena was located every summer. And in red is what we ended up proposing. So instead of a building with facades on a given plot, acting as an architect who is a service provider for the needs of a client, it seems more appropriate to propose an amphitheater open to the river dynamics without facades. That took 5 years, this obvious solution, but because we had convinced to turn down dikes, et cetera, et cetera. So, and to integrate this building into the restoration of entire waterfront of the city. So we were in our 30s at that time and believed that our responsibility was not only to act as service providers for the client's need, but also we needed to be able to diagnose the territory that can be transformed into, and to have a vision for what the territory would be and how this piece of architecture would act within it. So in the proposal at your right, the white rectangle is a connection with the town and the river with a plaza, and the white hidden line is a new streetscape. And in front towards the river, a new park, 4 kilometers of a new park, within which the amphitheater is placed. The whole process took 5 years, and we started thinking, what if instead of a bullfight arena, we recover the whole waterfront? What if the building becomes a plurifunctional instead of a single use? What if, all these things that we do in research studios several times, and we always think, oh, that's impossible. For that, we organized an exposition and had a vision and raised resources from the European Union and got the resources, and then the municipality had only to pay a 5%. But the important lesson here is that architects and designers of the environment should be able to diagnose the place before placing any object that they're asked to design. So that once the project reframed and unfolded, the sequence of seasonal floods was designed working with microtopography and drainage. So you see here above is the normal flood and below is the flood with the building. So the river dynamics of the Cayuga River, I observed and understood as a positive agent, and that fertilizes the riparian forest and maintains it. So the project is one of public space, landscape, engineering, architecture, and urbanism, all in a continuous manner. Above you see the section where the 3 terraces in different gray color. On top is a number 1 with the town at level 1. Level 2 is the park with access to the amphitheater on the upper level, and level 3 is the floodable forest. The lower terraces at level 3 drains, logically they flood and unflood. And so these blue lines you see are natural drainage with microtopography, is a work of microtopography that understands architecture as binded to the topography. Architecture and topography work together as, with this micro design of steps. So these drains are draining towards the river, and they are planted with filters of trees that are reducing the energy of flood as the flood comes down in the image from bottom to top. So the bullfight arena is an amphitheater placed in a park with more than one function. Not a typical bullfight arena that, as you see in the right, with facades and enclosed, but one instead that is open, is an amphitheater that performs different programs seasonally, in the fall, in the spring, the seasons it gets flooded, offering a lake to the park's users. And of course, in summer is the receptacle of corridas and bulls and toreros, as we've seen already in the previews. So looking at architecture as part of the territory means to understand well urban issues, topography, drainage, the water cycle is critically important, and the social agents that operate within. So people's dreams and resources and natural dynamics and the very matter of life. So that for this project, cohabitation with floods in a productive manner was our aim. I wanted to highlight here a piece of text written by bullfighter artist and painter, who is Luis Francisco Esplá, that writes in the book, in his essay, that he's obsessed with balance. He started as a bullfight person playing with karate and judo, and he was obsessed with balance and this idea of the relation between humans and animals and this intuition of balance. And he has in this text, it says, if I have started out by speaking of balance, it is because with this intervention, where the tremendous allegorical charge of its elements would guarantee serious conflict in advance, the voice of Solomon calls into being the harmony of a perfect braid, architecture, symbolism, and nature. Perhaps the success of this communion lies in the sagacious modesty, with which the project is built. So, let's see, where I have my mouse. In making us, so that in the desire not to build, in this case, physically on the land, but in making us believe that the space occupied by the arena was always there, and yet another gift of its fluvial generosity, that the promontory that accommodates the tiers of seating rose up all by itself, so that to cover up the hullabaloos of the festivals. So that was a surprise when we heard a bullfighter to talk about the building in that way, you know, in that kind of opening of a bullfight arena that is typically enclosed into an open to the river. The second project we wanted to share here is the Mill Cultural Center in Utebo. That's another like architectural problem. The first one was to cohabitation with floods. And this one is about the heritage, how to transform a ruin that has an important value for the society that lives around, but it has to be transformed into a cultural center, and how to take this matter and transform it into the future and something different. So it's a small town in Utebo in the agricultural floodplain of the Ebro River, upstream the city of Zaragoza. It's a place full of irrigation channels that are worked during centuries, that work by gravity, just like the flow of water to irrigate the fields. And this is a site of this ruin of this old mill that have worked for centuries to transform wheat into flour. So zooming out again, we see that the town is somewhere in here in this large agricultural field, and zooming back again in, the competition brief asked to transform the space into a cultural center. So the proposal aims to keep the material memory of Earth extending from the old building to the new one and beyond to all public spaces around, and to make feel that the surroundings of the building themselves were excavated into the earth. So that's as to make feel this has been excavated, as you see in the section. So the competition model strives to achieve some kind of, let's say, shy monumentality for this small piece to feel special into a context of which is the middle of an urban block full of housing. And that is really small. But the idea of having a monomateriality and excavation as almost emerging from the earth makes it, we thought, a silence around, by provoking this sense or looking for this sense of shy monumentality. So the abstract volume takes the extreme care framing windows that are not connected to human scale. So the important aspect here is to have windows that are not telling which scale it is. A building made out of a messy material, tinted concrete with a texture of canes and high joints that aims to amplify the perception of monomateriality. So expressed in the drawings too, light is coming from the northern orientation, often, especially in the roof, with small apertures to save shadowy light from the inside. Windows that are void, again, the immense scale, to attempt to make difficult the perception of scale and save its monumentality in a context surrounded by mundane domesticity. The structure is made of concrete that acts as a shell, make possible the horizontal windows, as you see in this diagram. And from the inside, the building is shiny and smooth, as if the water has eroded it. And from outside is like a geode, it's textured, that vibrates with the light of the day, claiming its space in time, past, present, future. Inside, you see this shiny, and outside this vibrant set of shadows. So a transformation of the old building that is celebrated here the day of the opening. And to conclude with this specific building that is obsessed about this marking the time, I guess it's the influence of landscape architecture into architecture in our practice, and the role of materiality. So that's David Cohn, an article, an essay of a North American critic of architecture specialized in Spain, that writes, in Alday Jover's encompassing approach to design, the habitat is no longer the tabula rasa of the technician. It is a palimpsest replete of traces of the interactions of human history and culture with the natural habitat and the givens of geographic circumstance. Any new intervention simply joins and modifies this accumulated natural and cultural history. And here you have the last slide of that second project, 15 years later, when this forested plaza in front of the old ruin comes alive, because the shadows are telling the time of the day. And so that the old ruin has fertilized the space around to make it a one piece that has grown in scale and converted this old ruin into a larger site that is earthy. So that is the two first projects. I can hand over to my partner.
Thank you, Margarita. We'll continue with another project that is like the next from the Fuera riverfront of the Bullfight Arena, that was working in the first project was here, and now we are working in the city of Zaragoza, in the main river, the most highest volumes in the Peninsula Iberica, and we participate in the competition for this piece of the meander of the river. We were very scared, and this was a critical view for us to approach the competition. We realized that our site was visible from a satellite. So we were very scared, because if we messed up, we were going to mess up very big, because you can see the messed up in a satellite. But most important of that, we realized that while the competition was asking for an urban park as part of the city and the international exhibition of 2008, going up in the satellite made us realize an obvious thing, that this piece is more part of the river than of the city. So our first decision was, we need to give back to the river an important part of it, because it's more part of the river than the city. This is the growth of the city of Zaragoza over time, and this was the new piece of the meander for the international exhibition. This meander had a road, the third ring, that was stalled, not built, because of the conflict of how to build in this meander. And the final decision was, when the international exhibition was placed here, 1/4 of the meander, while the other three quarters of the meander was going to be the water park, this international exhibition associated park that we won that competition, 300 acres park, a huge piece. The first thing that we did was thinking the project as giving it back to the river, and think that the space of the park was going to be defined by the forest around, what we call the silver forest. Here you see some of the trees that were already, and the recovered growing forest that is starting here. It was a very big project, very fast, and we did it in various phases. First phase was the forest, actually, not the inside. And this is in the first year of construction. We finalized this. Everything was messed up in the rest of the meander, and the river was doing maintenance already of that. So all this area that we basically gave it back to the river and to the dynamics of the river. This is an interesting photograph, because this was taken 1 week before the opening of the international exhibition in 2018. 1 week before the 14th of June. And it was a national crisis because it was called the International Exhibition of Water and Sustainable Development. And as you see, part of the grounds of the exhibitions are flooded. So it was 1 week, and all the newspapers in Spain is, what are we going to do? The International Exhibition of the Water is flooded. It was a national crisis. And it was very interesting because we had a newspaper piece that says, but paradoxically, the water park, which is designed to be flooded, is not flooded. We say, what? What are you talking about? The lesson is that when the people in the organization were asked by the journalists, so, and what's going on in the park? The answer was, nothing is going on, it's fine. So the journalists were interpreting, oh, then it's not flooded. No, of course it's flooded, but it's designed to be flooded. So it was a really interesting realization of this idea of catastrophe. So we won the competition basically with sketches from Margarita, like this one, not fancy renders. With another very important idea, that is to say that the landscape, we don't draw the landscape. The landscape is already drawn by the people who have been living there for centuries. They have already drawn the landscape. We are going to put a new layer of reinterpreting those drawings. So here you see all the traces are still here. Of course, we widen the canals and we change the use of the plots. But all the lines of the territory continue being there, which help us to avoid making mistakes. For instance, to trace canals against the dominant wind. We didn't do that. We kept the farmers. So they knew. We didn't know, but they knew. Or to mess up with the soil. So this is all the piece that was given back from agriculture to the river, already growing very quickly, and the dike, the main dike of the farmers that we kept as a structure of the park. And then all the system of small ditches that were widened and transformed into a recreational. And every one of the plots now reused as a part of the park. And a critical piece was to take water from the river and from agricultural ditches and clean it through green filters to be able to use them for recreational and even for swimming. So this is a public swimming pool with water that is treated from the green filters there. So this is the original structure of the meander drawn by the farmers through the ditches and the irrigation. And this is the new structure of a big canal reservoir, filters, and the canals that now are in a wider shape and volume, and then some of the plots excavated as lagoons. This is the very simple strategy of cut and fill, from this small ditch to a larger canal to be used by people. And this allowed us to make this very simple operation that helped to manage the winds. The perpendicular dominant winds that are very strong allows you to be protected inside this low ground. So spaces of treatment, and this is water coming from the last treatment piece to the usable spaces. Nature taking over bridges and everything. Plantations that are keeping the quality of the water along the canals. And of course, the first time that we saw a swamp, we were terrified. What is this horrible plastic swamp doing here? We would love to have a nice wooden something. No. But after a while, we decided, what else can you ask for? More fun than this, that people are really enjoying with a swamp. Please, more swamps in the canals. No? So in the end, is for this, even if it is kind of horrible, but they have fun. This is why we do this. No? So the architecture, we did for 8 buildings in this park in very close, in just 3.5 years. So some architecture that is very permeable, very light, that allows for water and wind to pass by. This is the ceremonies pavilion for civic non-religious weddings, or buildings that are built inside the water, inside the floodable area. This is a theater, and the theater is in a floodable area, and it behaves like a boat. So it's anchored by the weight on the foundations. The water comes here during the floods up to this level typically. So all these facade is an hydraulic protection, and this theater is like a ship. Ships have leaks, so this has also leaks. So the strategy is we control the leaks drain until at low bottom and it's pumped out. So you never see water inside the building. It's just like a boat. So a completely different way to manage the relation between buildings and water to the bullfight arena or to the light pavilions. And an important piece of this was the reorganization of the facade in a kind of urbanistic, in urban planning operation with different facilities on top of this artificial terrace that was mediating between the neighborhood and the park. And one of the challenges, there were several infrastructural buildings, and this was the most challenging of them. This is a power plant. And this power plant, a power plant is typically spread in an industrial site with different volumes, and it's typically a problem of urbanity. In this case, it had to be part of the city and part of the park. So we designed a power plant that was being able to be visited by the public in a safe way, but also a video art center that is communicating with the public and with the citizens around. So it's a very abstract building. It could be anything. In this case, a power plant with a really fun and interesting program to place here in 3 levels with a huge reservoir that is half underground, with a safe path for people to visit and see what's going on here because it's part of the neighborhood. With big heaters that are like 18-wheelers in the 3rd floor, and with an area that can explode at any moment, so it has to be light. And this area is a media facade that projects videos, so there are artists that do videos and they are connected with the performance of the power plant. So this was 2008 as well. The park floods, as you can imagine, and this is a big flood in 2015, the equivalent to a 25-year flood. We have had several 25 and 10-year flood in only 15 years. So it's clear that those metrics are not really relevant anymore. But here you see how it behaves, the park. What we were asked by the organization is to protect the park from floods. And we transformed that into let's ask the park to protect the city from the floods, but let the park flood if necessary. So here you see how the valley is flooded and how the water enters into the city, into the channel of the city through the cushion of the water park. And huge flood, as you see. This is the satellite view, the water park doing the cushion, and then flood again after that. And we also discovered floods that we didn't expect. So water table floods. So the area that is protected from the river has floods inside. So these are 10 centimeters over the level of the paths around. And we even realized that there were some islands coming up because of the push of the water table. And this is the back side of the theater that I showed you before. And this is the people of the theater sent this meme to the public there. I don't know if you read. Yeah, well, you can imagine what this meme says. But the point is how we address this, how this happens without any catastrophe happening in the building inside. No? But most important, all this is for these people that are using the park. So when we are working in this satellite view and these big floods, but also in the people that are going to enjoy here. So these are the benches that we designed for the water park. We call it lovers' benches because this was the area of the city where lovers were used to meet before the construction. And some other benches that we designed for the other project of Zuera that are also in the water park, but are also in the Tour Eiffel because the French think that the tourists are as bad as the rivers when flooding. So, so these are very resistant benches that are here in the Eiffel Tower. If you are interested in the lineage of the design of public space and flood, this is a chart that is part of my failed PhD dissertation. I have failed for 3 times now. I'm not sure I'm going to try again. So I cut it short. This is the lineage of the design of the floods, but also the major policy moments, the major flooding events in the different countries, and which are the main references. These are in the book if you are interested. We are going to do one more floodable park in Pamplona. This was the 3rd of our series of built projects. And in this case was a very different situation. We had a river that was very much inside a channel and an agricultural meander that had become part of the city, surrounded by city around, and a very important value. There's a lettuce that is endemic of this meander, a species of a lettuce. So it has an enormous cultural value besides the food production. And we learned from the farmers that you don't want to protect with walls, because once the water go over the wall, then it's a cataract, it's a waterfall, and it damages everything. So what they do is to create bushes that filter the water. They filter the stones, filter the washing machines, the tires, and everything that the flood takes over, and lets the water go, because the water actually is good and is fertilizing the land. So we learned that from the farmers there. And we found that this is the original flooding state, backwards flooding, until it goes over the limit of the perimeter and everything gets flooded. And the farmers talked about what they call the inner river, a lower part inside the meander. So we thought that connecting the inner river directly to the river would alleviate floods, not only in the park, which doesn't matter, but in the neighborhoods around, because it was going to give more capacity to the river. So these are the different scenarios in which at some point the park floods equally. But the critical operation was the creation of this floodable forest, excavating parcels of land in order to protect the most delicate in the edge of the meander and to give more capacity to the river. So this is the first phase. The second phase is to be finalized here, but the floodable forest and the protection of all the most important agricultural pieces in the edge of the meander. So increasing the capacity, not by widening the river, but giving another new river, temporary new river. So this is how it works. As you see, now the river, the second river is in action, is full, and we are diminishing here the flood, but the importance is what we are avoiding the flood here. That was typically an area that was heavily flooded. So with this extra capacity. So the public space here is, again, an infrastructure, but not social infrastructure or metaphorically an infrastructure. It's actually a water infrastructure that increases the capacity and changes this kind of flooding to this new performance of being part of the river. And you see the comparison of the two floods side by side. Of course, this floodable forest is for people 300 days of the year. So people come here to study. There's Wi-Fi, to have picnics, to hang out, and from time to time is part of the river. Of course, architecture is included. This is the Center for Interpretation of Agriculture here in the meander, and it's again an architecture that has to deal with this condition of flood. So these are holes for the water to pass, but basically for the terrain to soak and to get dry, and a very light construction that is thought that if the regular 25 years flood arrived to here, higher floods will arrive to here. Everything comes from the ceiling, so you can have if the big flood happens, which has not happened yet, thankfully, infrastructures of the building will not be damaged. So a different way of dealing with materiality to the Molino and other most muscular buildings are very, very light. All these are agricultural nets with white insulation and polycarbonate, very, very light, agricultural-like even construction. The river, when it floods, I think it will work here. So the river, when it arrives to this level, the river goes over this and enters over this line. The river goes in this direction, enters laterally. So the design of the bridge and all these pieces is to help the water move, drop all the stones and all the big trees and everything, washing machines and of course, because once the flood comes, you are never sure what will happen. But the objective is this. Here you see the floodwall forest full of water, and the objective is this, to eliminate flooding in the rest and avoid this situation. We are going to continue with water and projects of public space and planning and infrastructure, Margarita.
Yeah, from floods in public space to another type of infrastructure, which is a forest, like metropolitan green forest around the city of Madrid. So that's another competition we won that we did during COVID 2020. And so the ambition is of a green metropolitan forest around the city of Madrid. So to the left, you have the map of Spain with Madrid at the capital of the country at the center in this red circle, inland in a highland plain, which is called Meseta. And the interesting thing is that the foothills of a permanently snow-capped mountain range, which is called Guadarrama. So the prospect of climate change in Spain transformed the country into an increasingly arid country, as per IPCC graphs you see to the right. So if we zoom in yellow, you see what is the autonomous region of Madrid, the capital, 7 million inhabitants, and is, as I mentioned, at the foothills of the Guadarrama mountain range, which is on this black dotted line you see. At the photo bottom right is this fantastic mountain with snow. And at the south of this yellow patch is the Tajo River that connects with Portugal, where you can connect with move goods through, at least in the past. So the new green belt is 32,000 hectares, and it's meant to contain the city connect the city with large natural parks around. And it's part of the European strategies for mobility reform to decrease CO2 emissions. So if we zoom into the municipality or the metropolitan area of Madrid, we see that this green belt has different parts. It's a different competitions in the different lots, and we won number 4, which is essentially what I'm going to explain, and this area here. So the project has essentially 8 ideas, 8 basic ideas that are moving through time, different types of projects that are planning, architecture, landscape, etc. So that all are different timelines, but essentially the project carries only 8 ideas, which is this area you see here. The first motto idea is that the sewer treatment plants of the city will be the springs, new springs that are going to feed the irrigation of this green belt. So the sewer treatment plants are suddenly a big resource of water. In Madrid, it rains only 18 inches as opposed to 64 it rains here in Miami. So it's really a little rainfall. So how do you do a park without water? So the water is coming from the sewer treatment plants. So that is the main principal idea out of 8. With that, this regenerated water flow back into the river. Normally they do, but in this project, what we do is to take part of this water and to have an infrastructure of irrigation by dripping that allows the forest to grow over time. And the other ambition in terms of design question is that the sewer treatment plant, as you see here in this image, is going to be compacted. A new generation of sewer treatment plant will use less space, and all these yellow parts are going to be gone. And the ambition is to transform this sewer treatment plant into a large public space that is able to manage water as if it was a garden. That's a scale comparison with the Alhambra of Granada, which is a cultural heritage in Spain that is this fortress that has water that comes by gravity from the mountains. So how do we perceive or transform architecturally in terms of landscape an infrastructure into a public space as if it was Alhambra Granada? The second idea is, of course, to turn down dikes and make more floodable space, and then increase the surface of agricultural fields. So citizens can be engaging into this cultivation of food in close proximity to the city. And that involves recovering old buildings, having new small buildings, pavilions, and things like that. The third idea is archaeological and architectural remains, is to restore and recover a big navigation canal of the 18th century that exists semi-sunken there, that was able or was built to navigate upstream the river and connect these large orchards downstream Madrid to the central markets in the city, and also to connect the city of Madrid to the Tajo River that connects to the Atlantic Sea through the river. The fourth idea is to recover cattle trails and push for slow mobility infrastructure, so people can move with a donkey, a horse, from the park to a bus stop, and from the bus stop to the subway, and subway to home. So the interface of fast mobility and slow mobility, intermodally integrated. So this push in recovering this low mobility infrastructure. The fifth idea out of 8 is to promote transversality between the ring, that is a circular thing, between the city inside and the forest transversally, with, as you can imagine, all kind of bridges underneath and above the highway. And the sixth idea is to look for places of opportunity. In this case is an electrical substation, a place of opportunity that reconverted into a social hub with new facilities. And along with the social hub, there's a huge monumental wetland that is a new landscape infrastructure that is holding the water from the sewer treatment plant into an intermediate territory before it arrives to the level of the river. So it's a water park-ish for the neighbors and the metropolitan scale. So this looks like that. The seventh idea, of course, is that we have different teams of people working in this huge forest around the city, the compact city of 7 million people. So we had discussions among ourselves on how to do this palette of forests that will be more or less homogeneous and determined by the condition of soils and the condition of access to water. So this palette is agreed upon the whole team of the whole 6 teams of multidisciplinary teams to construct this unity across the metropolitan forest. The thing here is to go beyond restoration. So it's not an ecological project, a project of restoration, but it's really important to have the design of this reforestation begging for care to the citizens through the interface of beauty, the framework of plantations and the form and species that are provided through project is critically important to understand that this is not a natural territory, but an artificial one that has cultural values, etc. So we are in this design phase of this forestation, artificial forestation, that has different patches of different types of forests depending on the conditions. And the last idea of this project is, of course, to turn down dikes and make more space available to floods, so it's self-maintained, but the natural flow of the river that you see here before and after. This increase in flood performance that is studied to the level of detail of floods that are staying there several days and then changing the conditions for species to emerge. So it's a project of a guerrilla mode project that has several scales at several speeds, and but it has the same ambition to build part of this metropolitan forest for the city. And this project is part of also about reform of CO2 emissions. So it's forestation, carbon absorption, but also lowering the emissions of CO2, then rethinking mobility through this low mobility and intermodality that we just passed through quickly. And the last one is in Barcelona, and it's also a project of a park, a linear park, that is reconnecting the city, one of the densest cities in Europe, to its geography and its territory. So this is a Sagrera, it's an axonometric of the city of Barcelona with the latest large-scale urbanistic transformations. We have the end of the diagonal, 2004 project, etc. But here, the important thing is that it's part of high-speed train infrastructure. So the blue line is the tunnel underneath the city, the high-speed train that connects Madrid to the large network of high-speed train infrastructures in Europe, so Paris, Frankfurt, etc. So it passes underneath the city and moves into the Sagrera station side. The wise decision of the municipality is to say, hey, if the high-speed train is coming, do not build that into the Sun station, but into Sagrera station, the new station, and takes this opportunity for new investment and to solve problems on the neighborhood across the Sagrera area. So the client is the Barcelona Sagrera high-speed train company that is a private public agent. The team we put together was Alday, Jover, RCR, and West 8 to design the Sagrera Park. That is the only park that you cannot build a piece of city. So it's a park on top of the roof of the sunken infrastructure of high-speed train. So it's a large multi-layered project that has urbanistic development and then infrastructure, etc. But that our park is only the linear park that falls into the roof of the river, of the train infrastructure. So we have three main ideas. The first one, obvious, is to strengthen the transversal connections across the neighbors by connecting different civic nodes and having this series of public spaces traverse the park, the long linear park of 2.5 miles. The second idea is one that is going beyond the site itself, outside the limits of the project itself, that is advocating for what we call a green diagonal of slow mobility, which is a crack in the city that aims to have a green slow mobility infrastructure that connects the outside mountains and the sea, so that the city of Barcelona can go with a donkey, is there like a sticker with a donkey, a Catalan donkey recovered, and a horse to go from the city to the outside with slow mobility. So you see the transversal section of this forested, multi-species forested on top of but the point is that the proposal goes beyond the site itself. So that's the second idea, a green diagonal of slow mobility that is inheriting the traces of the Roman aqueduct and the medieval channel, and has a historical reason for it to be. This second idea, it's at the scale of the park, is a path of sandy path, curvy path that looks like rural path that traverses the city as if the city has cracked. And this path is traversing a forested landscape with clearings in between. And these clearings have suddenly different gardens in the middle. So, and the third and last idea of this big infrastructure is a series of fountains at different scales, from the small drinking fountain to the monumental fountain that is a floatable plaza that gets like 2-3 inches of water at the ground level. It's a microtopography that gets flooded and unflooded. So those are, because in the territory, naturally, you have springs. So people go to springs and the springs have names, and it's like a gossip place. So bringing this idea from the territory down to the urban park at another scale is the aim of this infrastructure of fountains. So these three ideas are carried at different scales, and they form this green diagonal of slow mobility. So those are the three ideas, and it's curious to see how this idea is part of an heritage. So that's the same city of Barcelona with a green diagonal, let's say, was somewhere here. the city of Barcelona has this well-known extension plan that was designed by Ildefons Cerdà, along with a general theory of urbanization in 1800s. And so this original city was designed to be a green city. It was supposed to be with L-shaped blocks and parks and a lot of open space. And as you can see at the left, but it ended up being a mass of cement with huge problems of heat island effects. It had also a lot of large parks, but it didn't, they were finally built. But the project is interesting that Ildefons Cerdà, it's himself writes a sentence in the general theory of urbanization that says these big thoroughfares that I have designed that are 150 wide thoroughfares are aiming to connect the city to the world. So, and this idea of connecting the city to the world was interpreted by Le Corbusier in the 20th century as the connection with the port and the airport and the infrastructures of mobility, because those were the obsessions of the 20th century, industry, airports, and the industrial model to connect the city with the world through moving goods. But today, in the 21st, in addition to those movements, we aim to connect, at least in this project, to connect the city to the world through the connection with its geography and its landscape. And that's the idea of this green diagonal of slow mobility. To end with really this slide, last slide that says by David Kohn also, the work is no longer strictly contained with the conceptual boundaries of the individual building or project as a principal object of design and study. Instead, the attention has shifted to the holistic overview of the habitat, of the environment, and its mix of urban and natural features as the true field of action of architecture and its ambitions. So here is the book, and I hope you enjoy.
Margarita and Inaki, thank you very much. We have a few minutes. Yes, still good, still energy, lots of time. Any questions from the audience? You guys raise your hand. I can bring you the microphone. Everybody's always shy at first, and then we get overwhelmed with questions. Nobody. I can walk to a student that I know. Okay, I see a question way up there. Give me 1 second. Okay.
Okay, good.
The people online won't be able to hear you. They'll be so sad, Liz. Okay. I'll repeat the question. The question was, who initiates the projects that aren't competitions?
That aren't competitions. Yeah, all our competitions.
But no.
Oh, yes, the first project was not a competition. And yeah, we don't have like a special role. We just alternate. Maybe you have an answer. But we are different. I'm more like large scale, and you're more. Maybe you can respond. I don't know.
So most of the projects are open competitions, and then you submit anonymously and hoping to win. The Thura project was an interesting situation. It was before that was mandatory by European Union, and it came from the thesis project of a bullfight arena that I developed. And the mayor said, "Oh, I like that bullfight arena. Can you, because it doesn't look like a normal building, can you think about a bullfight arena for us?" So actually, the thesis of this. And then he asked us to put the bullfight arena in that only last connection between the town and the river, and that's when we started. And in this case, it was a whole engagement process in which we engaged with the watershed authority. So the municipality had at the time $40 million pesetas for doing a little square. And because of the process of engagement, we ended receiving 400 some million, 90% from the European Union. So with the same amount of money, the municipality could build the entire piece. And it was an interesting process in which, because that was a landfill and there were rats and smells and there was no switch, the switch was thrown to the river directly. So most of the project is protection and sewage and infrastructures. And the project, the images you have seen, the finishings are extremely poor and extremely simple, but it was very moving. A few moments of engagement with the people, in which when we presented an exhibition and big photographs of a very simple model made of paper, but blown up big, people were saying, "Where is this? Where is this?" No, it's nowhere. It's just a model, but just a big picture of the model. And then another very beautiful moment was when it was open and there were lights, very simple lights in the park, and we had a couple of senior ladies going hand by hand and saying, "Oh, now we have our San Sebastian," because San Sebastian is the most posh city, beach city in Spain, and they felt like now they had their posh city. So the process of building pride was very moving in that sense, with the help of everyone in the town.
I have a question for you guys. First of all, thank you for the amazing presentation and work. The scale of the work is amazing, and just to put together a team and be able to manage sort of projects at this scale. I know you guys are architects, landscape architects, and urbanists. In the last project, you said you partnered with West 8 and RCR, but can you guys talk a little bit about what does it mean to put a team together? How do you sort of think outside the box for each project and collaborate? Because I know that's something that we try to teach here, is that we're going to have to, work with other disciplines, think and engage other disciplines. So I'm interested in hear about that.
In that case specifically, I think it's looking at your peers. So who do you admire to work with, or who do you want to learn from? And in this case, the competition base was asking for 3 teams to collaborate, which is like a little bit of a nightmare at first. But so we talked first with Agence Terre, to whom we really like to work, but they were busy with another team. So we called West 8 and collaborate with them, and ask RCR, that are really refined architects. They have the pre-skirt in architecture, and put together the team. And the collaboration went really well. I think we understood, because in the competition phase, it's more about the ideas and it's about coherence of the proposal. And so that worked really well. And then it was set up also for success, because in a way, once you deliver the competition, you have this kind of large scale proposal that is coherent. Then we decided to divide this in 3, and every team will have a different interpretation of the large scale ideas. So I think it works really well, but my advice will be to look for teams you like to work with and you want to learn from.
And perhaps the other is the collaboration with engineers and other fields. And in our competitions of these floodable spaces, the engineers are part of the competition with us, which is a miracle, because the engineers are very pragmatic, and you don't pay their hours, they don't want to play. But we have always collaborated with the same set of engineers, biologists, and all kinds of other expertise. So we are like a family already. So we go together to these kind of things, and then we challenge each other. And it's an interesting process in which we know a little bit of what they do, they know a little bit of what, so we ask the others kind of punching questions to try to go beyond what can be an expected immediate solution.
Thank you. Question here.
Thank you for the lecture, amazing work. And I can't help but think, to what extent is this translating into a pedagogical program at Tulane, given, New Orleans, the region, it's so like this resonates so much with the problems that region is facing. So is that becoming something important in at the school?
Yeah.
Maybe a small answer before you get the big one. So we have a class that is called Site Strategies, that within the curriculum, that is a core class that teaches students system thinking. And so the idea is that we teach them to material assembly and space assembly, which are the key cornerstones of an architect, but also system thinking, which means like systems reassembly. So vegetation system, water system, mobility system, all these like reassemble. And that's a core class that everyone takes, undergrads and grads at the school. And that's part of the curriculum.
And then there are several research studios. You started with a big grant from the National Academy of Science and Engineering, dealing with the Gulf climate futures. We know that basically very often in grants and research, there's a lot of analytical work and a lot of prediction of what's going to happen in different scenarios, and there's much less about desired scenarios. So that's something that you talk very often about. What is the desired scenarios? How we interject desired scenarios in the big grant and in the big research, and that's something that you have been developing lately.
Yeah, expected futures is what scientists provide, and desired futures is what designers can provide. So if they both can raise money together and put scenarios of desired futures for discussion in the public sphere, is that kind of the goal of our like educated people.
Now Margarita is starting a new program of landscape architecture and engineering, which will be a new profile of a landscape architect professional degree with a Master of Science in Engineering that is completely integrated, both of them together, which we are very hopeful that is going to be a very interesting degree, very needed. But it makes more, it's the infusion of all that as part of the architecture curriculum as in large. So what we are trying is to make sure that at Tulane, at the school, there's no boundary between the architects, what supposedly architects do, or preservationists do, or even real estate developments do, and how this is a kind of fluid territory. So now we have landscape architects teaching in the architectural curriculum, and we are trying to have this kind of urban and urbanism we like much more than urban planning that is a very policy oriented, or urban design that is very morphologically oriented, to the idea of urbanism as a kind of holistic science, as Margarita was describing from CERDA, that is dealing with the infrastructures of the city, but with the what we have learned after CERDA of the metabolism of the city and the territory, and how the city is never ends in the last building, but the city has multiple scales depending on the systems in which you are looking at.
Well, I hope you have quick graduates that infiltrate the Army Corps of Engineers with the landscape engineering thinking. But with that, I think that's a great place to end this evening. Thank you guys again for your time and for coming from Tulane. If you guys can all help me thank them.
Thank you.